there everyone, it is Rabbit and I have to open by apologizing for the backdrop here. Andrew and I are still in the process of setting up our new house, so I know it looks a little crazy. Like, you can see all these wires over here to my right hand side, maybe some pillows that are just stacked up on a chair. Just bear with me while I get my life together. I know it's also super echoey still, but what you gonna do? Anyway, my friends, I was thinking after talking to a couple of you just about the idea of doing an initial impressions type of video whenever I start a new Let's Play series, and then possibly following up with a final thoughts video once the playthrough has concluded. I don't know if this is something that I will routinely do or if it's even something that I will follow up with a final thoughts type of video for this episode, if you want to call it that, or for this specific piece of what should be like a two-part series. But you guys already know that I absolutely love analyzing and reviewing video games, but I am just not a fan of editing. So this seems like it'd be kind of a soft compromise where I can talk to you guys a little bit about my initial impressions, things that I'm liking so far, maybe things that I'm not liking so far. And I think it'll honestly be a little interesting to see from the start of the narrative to the end when everything kind of concludes and is, you know, just brought around full circle, just seeing like how did things kind of wrap up, and am I as big of a fan of certain pieces at the end as I was at the beginning, or was there something that I liked at the beginning that kind of started to grate on my nerves as we approach that end? You know, that's kind of the mentality going into a video of this sort. Oh, but before we get started, how can I not introduce my friend here? So this is Phammer, and he will be joining me for this video because he is a really big fan of video games and he begged and pleaded to be featured. So here you go, Phammer. Make sure you smile for the camera. Total aside that has nothing to do with video games or reviewing anything, but I was sent this meme by someone who knows that I'm so obsessed with my guinea pigs. I actually have 7 of them plus 6 budgies. It's a little wild around here. We pretty much have our own zoo, but I have a really good friend who is well aware of my passion for these creatures, and she sent me this meme that is basically, it's a picture of Mari. Not sure if you guys are familiar with the show or what it usually features. I've only maybe seen like 2 or 3 episodes in my entire life, but once you've seen one, you've pretty much seen them all. But the point of the meme is it's a picture of Maury holding this card, which I'm guessing has the results of a paternity test, but the caption for the meme as it applied to me, it essentially said something like, "You say you have a life, but the amount of guinea pig pictures on your phone has determined that is a lie." It's so sad, but so true. So anyway, Phammer and I wanted to talk to you guys today about Paladin's Quest, which is a Super Famicom / Super Nintendo Entertainment System game that was released here in North America in 1993. I am about, I would say, 4 hours into it, so insert shameless self-promotion here. I am doing a 100% blind Let's Play of the game. I have no exposure to anything, or I should say prior to beginning the recording for it, I had no exposure to it outside of the box art. I'd heard maybe like 1 track because I had a friend who owned the game, but I didn't know any of the characters' names, didn't know the plots, didn't know anything basically. So it is a 100% blind run. If you've never played the game before and you have no idea what the hell I'm going to be talking about, definitely feel free to hop on over there and check out what I've recorded so far. I will provide links as always in the description box below. But okay, ending my promotion there. So I just started Paladin's Quest, and I would say, Phammer, are we about 4 hours into the game? Maybe a little less? I'm thinking in terms of just parameters for myself regarding my initial or my first impressions of a game. It's probably best to record them, you know, within the first recording session, which typically for me, it's like, 8 to 12 episodes might be about what I get recorded when I start a new series. So that roughly translates to 3, maybe 4 hours. I think that's about where we're at in Paladin's Quest. So anyway, I haven't seen too much of the game so far, just enough to know who the protagonist is, to understand basic mechanics, to have been exposed to a couple different tracks, and just things like that where I've dipped my toe into it. I kind of know what to expect as I become more and more submerged into the the narrative and into the world as it is presented to us. But by all means, I don't know everything that's going to come. And if I had to venture, I would guess this game is probably a 20-ish hour RPG, but by all means, I wouldn't be surprised if it spills over into 30, 35 hours. You just never know with these older RPGs. But with that being said, being roughly 4, possibly 5 hours, and calm your dogs, please. Don't mind me, it's just like super early and that drives me nuts when people just let their dogs run around barking, but it's all good, Hammer. We're not gonna sweat the small stuff. So anyway, focusing. So just looking at a couple core pieces since we are just a few hours into the game and kind of my thoughts so far on everything as, you know, it's been presented to us and how things have unfolded in the game. I think one of the first pieces that you are, you know, just met with when you first turn on the game and, you know, you like pop it into your SNES, that would be the graphics, at least to me, because you have this little demo reel that auto runs, or you can actively play it if you know, are just dilly-dallying and looking at other menus. I think it only actually has a new game, continue, and then the demo, I think are your only 3 things that you can select. But you see the graphics initially, and when you first dive into the game, you know, the tutorial or the opening, it is playable. So you kind of go through this first chapter, if you will, as the protagonist named Chesney, and you are introduced to kind of, in general, what's going on and at least what the world is. And it really does a good job, I think, in the demo as well as in that first chapter, or in the tutorial stage, if you want to refer to it as such, of laying everything out and giving you the foundation for what your journey is going to be. So to talk specifically about the graphics, because that's what I sort of introduced all of this with, I think that for its time, you know, the graphics are a little more simplistic than what maybe you'd expect, especially when you consider the fact that Secret of Mana came out the same year as Paladin's Quest, at least in North America. I don't know exactly how those dates translate for Japanese releases, so keep that in mind. I'm specifically referring to NA releases, but 1993 was the year that both of these came out. And it's interesting when you kind of compare side by side what they look like. I would say that Paladin's Quest doesn't seem as polished initially, but to give it credit, and something that Hammer specifically stated that he liked, I think that the graphics, and I shouldn't say the graphics, but the colors that are used and the palettes that are utilized throughout the game, they're very vibrant and they catch your eyes very well. I almost feel like whoever was the lead of the creative team, he was a fan of pastels and a fan of bright colors, which I feel like every time I record a video, I'm wearing black or gray, maybe navy blue. So I personally am not the biggest, like, wow, color poppin' kind of person, but I can appreciate in an RPG that different shades would be implemented into the designs of monsters or the designs of towns and dungeons and things like that. So far, I have to give 2 thumbs up to that. I very much appreciate the implementation and utilization of more of those brighter colors. So the next piece, you know, outside of like the graphics and the visuals that I think, you know, worthy of praise would be the audio. Now, Hammer and I are not super big fans of the music in the sense that we're just jamming out to it and I'm humming the tunes throughout the day. If I can be 100% honest with you guys, it's been probably 3 days since I stopped my first recording session and we got about 11 episodes done. And, you know, maybe it's 2 days, right, Hammer? 2 or 3. I couldn't hum any of the tracks for you right now. Like, there's not a specific song that just stands out in my head or that I can't get out of my head. And that can be both a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing in the sense that there wasn't a song that was just so awful and so repetitive that you cannot stop singing it and you want to blow your brains out, which, side note, no shade, because I like the game and appreciate for what it was, but Hoshigami Ruining Blue Earth had a horrendous soundtrack that was incredibly repetitive. The beats were used way too much. It didn't have enough variety. Everything was on auto loop. It was trash. The soundtrack is utter garbage, and I would not recommend getting the OST. There's maybe, would you say there are 2 songs that you liked from Hoshigami Hammer? I think that might be I would say that's the majority of it. It was just like 2 that I liked. And yeah, Hoshigami didn't have much going on in terms of its soundtrack. So what I am meaning by all of this is that I can appreciate that Paladin's Quest, you know, looking at the the good side of this that it isn't memorable. It's not like it has songs that are so awful that you can't stop thinking them because they play over and over and over again and they're on this tiny loop. So after an hour of dungeon crawling or doing whatever the hell you're doing, you're just like, I have to turn this off and put on some rap music or something. Now the bad side to this is that the music's just not super memorable so far. I feel like there's a general town song that we've heard. We've been in maybe 3, possibly 4 villages. So there's like a general town theme, there's like a battle theme. I don't remember if there's a boss theme. Was there a boss theme, Hammer? Maybe there was, I can't really recall. And then there's like this imminent danger and imminent doom theme that plays when things are a little hairy. So I think we've heard about 4 songs, you know, plus or minus 1. And yeah, like I said, not incredibly memorable, which is both good and bad. So I wouldn't say that I like the fact that I can't remember any of the songs so far, but it's not anything that I think, you know, the game deserves to be dragged for. So the third thing that I want to kind of just, you know, muse aloud about and just give my initial impressions and thoughts on would be the narrative itself as it's been presented thus far. So I've kind of 2 pieces that branch off from this core topic, and one of them is looking specifically at kind of the plot itself, and the other one is looking at how the plot is being presented to us. So starting with the plot, I don't think it's anything really to write home about. You know, I don't want to spoil you if you haven't played the game or seen the game at all on your own, but you know, I guess this is a spoiler alert. I will be talking about some pieces of it because I want to potentially compare my thoughts now at the end of the journey. So just as spoiler free as possible, but still with some possible spoilers. Essentially, the plot as it's been presented to us is that there is this world that has been peaceful for a time, but there's this machine or this deity or some sort of being that is released by accident, and because of that there is just this looming sense of destruction and this looming sense of doom and chaos that is pervasive throughout all the towns you go in, and you can tell everyone just sort of senses that things have changed. It's disrupted a lot of things going on with some people's their livestock and how they behave, or just with the environment that different groups of people have settled down into. It's kind of changed that. So there definitely are visible effects to what ends up happening in the tutorial and what happens in the beginning, which is good. But something that, you know, I'm sleeping on it a little bit is that this kind of story or this sort of plot has been done time and time again. It is very tropey in my opinion, where basically the gist of it is that the end of the world is nigh and it's up to a bunch of young, I guess you call them teenagers. 13 is technically teen, but in my mind 13 is still preteen. I don't know why that is, but however you want to label that or however you want to categorize 13, it's just like this stereotypical very young innocent group, but they're very noble and they're on this quest to save a bunch of adults and the whole world. It's not super novel, and I don't even think that the way they did it was that creative or that they employed any like interesting things with it. So, you know, it is what it is. I don't think that the plot is necessarily bad, but it's something that we've seen so many times in these retro RPGs that it's fine. Now, the other piece of it that I told you guys kind of branches off this idea of the narrative and of the plot itself is the concept of how it's presented to us, or the pacing. And I talked about this, I think was it episode number 10, Hammer? Maybe it was 11, but I'll just say it again in case I didn't say this out loud. That I think one of the things that the game does very well is handling its pacing, because even though I would say it goes back and forth between having you do a bunch of dungeon crawling and having you explore a town and talk to several people, in spite of the fact that it is kind of like this repetitive back and forth of, oh, we're here just learning a little bit about what these people need, and oh, now we need to go and put into action whatever it is that's going to help these groups of people that we're interacting with. You know, I think even though that, again, isn't super new and it's not super novel, I think the game handles itself really well in not making you spend way too much time dungeon crawling before you're back in a village or in a town talking to people again. Like, I think it handled that back and forth exceptionally well to where I haven't felt super bored, like I don't know where to go next when I'm just meandering through a town and having to talk to all the NPCs. But, you know, I also haven't felt just ready to, again, blow my brains out because the encounter rate is super duper high and I'm spending 45 minutes getting through this humongous dungeon that looks exactly the same as a dungeon I explored 45 minutes ago. Like, all of the territories and all of the atmospheres of the dungeons so far, again, I'm less than 5 hours into the game, but so far all of the areas we've navigated that have been full of monsters and obstacles, they haven't really looked the same, I'm pretty sure. Like, we've had an area so far that's kind of forested, and then we were in a mountain, and then we were in a lava-like area. So, you know, there's been a lot of diversity, I think, in terms of the atmosphere and the surroundings in the game, which, again, not necessarily, I guess, tied into the narrative. Maybe that's more so coming back to the visuals that I talked about earlier and the graphics earlier. But I gotta give credit where credit is due, that I appreciate that the process of going from subplot to subplot, it's not incredibly tedious in that you're weighed down by all of this just boring dungeon crawling that takes for fucking ever, and the fights are extraordinarily redundant and the music drives you nuts. Like, that's not the case at all. I think navigating the dungeons has been pretty fun. The encounter rate is high, but I feel like that's very typical of this type of game and from this era of gaming. So I think they handled their pacing incredibly well. Next thing that I want to talk about somewhat briefly would be the characters. I don't have that much to comment on because, again, we haven't met that many of the characters simply because we're only a few hours into the gameplay. But I would say, somewhat like my feelings on the plot as a general category, that the characters are fine. I don't think any of the designs are that unique, and I don't think that any of the personalities are that unique either. I mean, our protagonist just seems like a very stereotypical, I'm gonna save the world and I aspire to be the very best, very Ash Ketchum-y, except, you know, without the over enthusiastic personality. He doesn't have that much to say. And then we also have a girl who is tied in. Her name is Medea. She's tied into the plot. I think she's one of the few permanent characters we have. Something that is interesting, and I'm not sure where I would put this if I ever did a formal review. Again, y'all know I don't like editing. But I can tell that this game approached the whole party member thing in another unique way, in that you can recruit a bunch of mercenaries, allegedly. I don't know if it's a lot of them or if it's just a few. So far, we've only encountered one that we can recruit, but I'm sure there'll be many more to come. But there seems to only be two primary protagonists that embark on the journey from start to finish, and then it's kind of up to you as the player to initiate who you want to be in that final party by hiring random mercenaries. So it doesn't seem as though there are people that, or a lot of other people that are just tied into the narrative that join you for whatever motivations they might have. There are temporary party members that you get that are tied to the plot, but they're really just there for the sake of you navigating the dungeon or whatever area that is tied to the town that you're helping at that specific point in the story. Or I guess you can break it up into chapters if you want to look at it that way. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So I guess coming back to my point in saying all of this, it's just that I wouldn't say any of the characters have been that fascinating or that well developed, but I don't dislike anyone. I don't think any of the personalities have been over the top. I don't think that the designs are necessarily bad. Again, I really like the colors and the vibrancy of the graphics in general. So I think the character designs kind of match that spirit, and it matches the tone of the game in general. Last thing I'm going to talk about, even though I could be here probably for 45 minutes just discussing this game, but I think Hammer is kind of getting a little full and a little sleepy, which I totally get. I think the last thing, which is probably what you were expecting me to open with, would be the user interface and in general just navigation of the menus and how they're constructed and presented to you. And I don't have that much to say. If you just watch the first episode of my playthrough, or if you just turn on the game and you get 10 minutes into it, not even that long, like 5 minutes into it, You know that the user interface is garbage. Everything is abbreviated to hell, and you have to just kind of guess what everything means. Now, supposedly, like, I don't have an actual manual with my copy of the game. It's something that you can order online. It seems as though there's an overabundance of scans that you can probably just Google search and print off yourself. However you want to get a hold of the manual, it does, or it did, come with an insert that has, I think from what I've heard from other people, it has all of the abbreviated names kind of spelled out for you. And I think there are also details, I think, provided for spells and for some items. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't looked at it myself yet, because I also heard, which is a little shitty, that the insert and the manual comes with a lot of spoilers. So it's like, do you want to try to have to spend the 20-30 hours of gameplay guessing what everything fucking means and what everything fucking does? Or do you want to look at the manual and, excuse me, possibly spoil yourself too? I'm guessing it has like the list of all the mercenaries maybe you can recruit, or it spoils what spells you gain access to later, because the spell system is also kind of cool. I don't know, again, where this would fit in if I was analyzing the game formally, but the spells are kind of given to you as you learn new, I guess it's like you read spiritual books, and then it combines like the fire element with the sky element, then gives you access to a wider array of spells that are concoctions and combinations of the elements. So very interesting. I like it. It's cool, right, Hammer? We're not mad about that. But coming back to just my point about the abbreviations, there are no descriptions for any of the items, and every item has like a wonky ass and sometimes inconsistent, it's just truncated and it looks like trash. So like FTH space H, what would you guys fucking guess that is? Now, after about an hour and a half of playing the game, you start to put two and two together, and I almost feel like you just have to immerse yourself in the time and immerse yourself in the game, and you can kind of figure out what they mean with their abbreviations. So after a while, FTHH made sense to me, don't ask me how, and it stands for feather hat. So like LTH is leather. I'm guessing WH is fucking whip. But that's what I mean, where there's no description for any of the items or the objects in the game. So you're just thrown into this world, and you have these items that you're finding as you're making your way through that tutorial chapter. And you're like, what the fuck is FLDOR? Like, what does that even mean? I can't click on it or hover over anything and see what it does. So, right, Hammer? Like, what the fuck are we working with over here? Now, I will say that the spells, even though they are also abbreviated to hell, and I hate it so much, they do come with very short, sweet, and simple descriptions that sometimes you know what it does, sometimes it doesn't help at all, and you're better off just guessing on your own the use of the ability. So I really don't know what they were doing with the truncations. I don't think it was a result of, limited space and limited text, because there are some things that are just spelled out for you, and then other pieces that are just like super short. It's just, why? I don't know. Now, I heard that the sequel, although it was never released in North America, it did a better job, and it does have a fan translation, so I don't know if the hackers, if you want to call them, or the modders fixed that, or if it was just inherent to the Japanese game that it was corrected. But I heard that it was vastly improved in regards to the truncated words. So anyway, I think I've rambled for long enough. I would say those are all of my thoughts on the game thus far. So I don't feel comfortable really attributing any sort of numerical value to the game, since we're still so early on. But, just as a general statement about my feelings, I would say that this game seems fine. Like, I don't feel just attached to it and like, oh, I can't wait to see what happens next. But it's not boring, it's not drab, it's certainly not painful to get through. So it's one of those games that, oh, Hammer, are you cranky? Are you ready to go back to bed? I think he is super duper done. Which I probably should be done too. I can't believe that I talk for as long as I do, but I just have so much to say. So anyhow, final thoughts. I would say it's a game that I'm going to more than likely enjoy for the most part as we go from start to finish, but will it be one that I think is worth replaying? Probably not, but we'll just have to see if/when I do my final thoughts video. I almost called it an ability. Oh, what am I doing? But when I do my final thoughts, or if I do my final thoughts video, to do the comparison to this one regarding how I feel about these various mechanics and these various pieces that we've discussed. So anyway, that is it from me and Phammer. Are you thirsty? Do you want to go to sleep, or do you want us to go outside and maybe get some fresh air? I don't know. We'll see what the day has in store for us, but thank you very much for watching, you guys. I would love to hear what some of your thoughts are on Paladin's Quest, whether you are watching my playthrough, again, link in the description, or you played it yourself and just, want to sound off and let me know what your thoughts were when you went through the narrative yourself. So take care, everyone, and I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks for watching. Say bye, Phammer. Bye, you guys.